So everybody, please welcome Brodie.
Hi everyone. So I'm Brodie. I'm really happy and excited to be here today to be talking to y'all. I know probably everyone says this, but it does really feel like yesterday I was sitting in school, really unsure about what to do next, really unsure about what to study, and I was like, what even is economics? So hopefully this helps clear a couple of things up for you guys today. In terms of my own career journey, so I actually studied economics and politics. So I did a joint degree at the University of Glasgow. And I absolutely loved that. I really like to see how both politics and economics kind of interact. Obviously, they've got such a big effect on each other. You know, we've seen that recently through whether it's COVID, Brexit, things like that. It's really important to study them both in tandem, I think. So I would really recommend that if anyone's considering it. During my time at university, I was lucky enough to do a couple of different work experiences and internships, which kind of led me to where I am now. So first of all, I did one work experience, which was with a politician in Scotland. So that was really cool to see that side of my degree. But it wasn't actually until I did one in the economics side. So I did a full summer working at the Fraser Allender Institute, as Charlie mentioned, where I work now, which was really cool. And it's when I did that, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is me seeing how what economics I've learned at university and at school as well actually impacts the real world. So after I finished up that work experience, I went and I did my master's degree. So if anyone's not sure what a master's degree is, I don't think I really was when I was at school. It's kind of the thing in between your first degree, so your undergraduate degree, and if you're going to do a PhD, which is the longer sort of 4 years one where you become a doctor. So that was really cool for a year, and I did that at Strathclyde University, and I did that in applied economics. So applied economics is basically taking all of your economic theories and the models you learn and how you actually apply them to, could be policies, it could be like business decisions, things like that. So I absolutely loved that. And I was lucky enough to continue working part-time at the Fraser Allender Institute during that. So when I finished up my studies, I started full-time working there. And what I'm doing now is an assistant economist. And just a bit of background to the Fraser Allender Institute. We're based in Scotland. So if anyone's kind of not heard of us or not quite aware, what we basically do is we are Scotland's leading independent research institute, and we've been around for about 50 years doing real world policy analysis, which basically means like we don't take a political opinion or sway or anything like that. What we do is provide kind of robust, reliable analysis for whether it be politicians or business people, journalists, or just the general public can kind of focus on wider economic issues like the budget, inflation, things like that. But then we also do businesses. So I've been really lucky to work with different construction businesses, pharmaceutical businesses, the renewable energy sector, which is all really cool. And we also do some stuff with charities as well. So there's a really wide range of work that we do here, and my work kind of covers all of that. So yeah, more than happy to get more into that if anyone wants to know, but that's a bit of a whistle-top tour of my career so far. So thank you, back to you, Charlie.
All right, great. We'll move on to our next speaker. Sorry, I think I've got something in my throat. Need a bit of a drink. Is Tuli. Tuli, would you like to come and tell us about you, a little bit about your career and what it is you do?
Yeah, hi everyone. Very happy and excited to be here with all of you and share my story and also hear from all of you. So how did I get here? A little bit about myself. I'm originally from India and I moved to the UK when I was 9 years old. So that was quite a big life change at a very young age. At school, I had a lot of different diverging interests. So I enjoyed maths, but I also really enjoyed English literature. And I actually did both for A levels. And I was a little bit confused about what direction I wanted to take my career. And economics kind of ended up as the choice, which was a intersection of all of my different interests, where it was something, there's numbers involved, but you can also think about a lot of different social issues. And so I applied for a range of universities, and then I ended up going to UCL in London to do my bachelor's degree. Like Brodie, I also did a master's degree. So after my undergraduate studies, I went to Cambridge to do an economics master's. And then I started working full-time at the Bank of England. And actually, whilst working at the Bank of England, I also did a second master's part-time in data science, which was to be totally honest, bit of a COVID choice where I had a lot of free time. I think maybe I was a bit addicted to formal education. But so like that's sort of my education path. Before actually joining full time at the Bank of England, I did internships as well, which is it's quite a standard thing you see, particularly amongst education, economics undergraduates. But when I got to university, I was quite like lost myself about, again, which direction I wanted to take my career. So I'd settled on economics, but then, I got to university and there's a lot of noise around you about career paths, whether you want to go into the industry, working in finance and banking. And even within that, there are a lot of different roles. There's also consulting. And particularly being in London and studying economics, you just get a lot of information bombarded at you. And I went through a process of applying for a lot of different internships, getting a lot of rejections actually, which was quite tough to deal with because it's kind of like one of the first times in my life to just go through relentless series of rejections. But then you learn and grow through that process. I remember the final kind of interview process I was going through was with the Bank of England for their summer internship program. And that worked out. And I remember it feeling like a very natural fit from the get-go. And the rest, as they say, is history. So at the bank itself, I've been working there for the last 5.5 years. I've worked on a few different issues. I've kind of worked on financial market analysis, and my most recent job was on producing the bank's UK economic forecast. So, you may have seen some headlines on whether the bank predicts a recession or not. So I've been kind of involved in that process, and I'm happy to say more about sort of different roles there at the bank and what it's like. But that's kind of the big picture summary.
All right, thank you. Moving on to our next panelist member then is Charlotte. Welcome, Charlotte. Can you tell us a little bit about your career and what it is you do?
Yeah, morning everyone. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you all this morning. Hopefully be able to share some interesting insights into my journey and how we can empower women and young girls to study economics and go into the profession. So my journey with economics started really when I was choosing my A-levels. So didn't study economics before that. And when I was choosing my A-levels, I was thinking, what am I really interested in? And actually quite similar experience to Tuli. I was really interested in maths, enjoyed maths, but also had an interest in social sciences. So for example, I really enjoyed geography at GCSE. So from what I understood, economics could be quite a good intersection of those interests in that it involves quantitative stuff using maths, but also has real world social applications. So I thought, yeah, let's give this a go. Really enjoyed the A-level course, found it really interesting. So I then decided to study economics at university. I studied my undergrad degree, my bachelor's degree at the University of Cambridge. And then I stayed on to also study a master's degree in economic research, also at Cambridge. During my time at Cambridge, my initial ideas for a career were mainly focused on the financial sector, mainly because that was where my dad worked and I kind of had a better understanding of what the job might involve compared to other careers. So I did a couple of internships in investment banking, specifically in investment research, which is basically where you have analysts within an investment bank producing research notes, analysis for clients, advising on what investments to make. So, stocks and shares, which ones to buy, which ones to sell. Also macro kind of bigger picture research, looking at economic growth, interest rates, those kind of things. So I did one in equity research, which is looking at stocks and shares and whether to buy or sell certain stocks. And then my second internship was in the European economics team at the bank where I worked. So that was more focused on the macroeconomic side of things, looking at data releases, decisions on interest rates by central banks, those kind of things. I really enjoyed both of those, but I think it made me realize that actually what I wanted from a career was to feel like I was having a direct impact on the way economics is applied to policy. In particular, I had a real interest in like climate change and those kind of areas, and I just really wanted to have a career where I felt like I was having a positive impact in those areas. So in my master's year, I was applying for jobs, and I applied for various roles at consultancies, economic consultancies. So you might have an understanding of consultancies in a general sense. It's basically where you have a group of experts working in a business who then work on projects for specific clients, providing expert advice on those areas. So you might have strategic advice, management advice. I work in an economic consultancy, so we really focus on economic analysis. So I've been at this consultancy, SEPA, for 3.5 years now, and we primarily work across the utility type industries, so energy, water, transport. So I've been here for 3.5 years now and have worked across a real wide range of projects, super interesting, often at the forefront of policy to help address climate change and net zero and achieve that. So really interesting work. And yeah, if anyone's got further questions on that, happy to talk about that later.
All right, thank you. All right, our final panelist then is Rebecca. Rebecca, would you like to come on and tell us a little bit about your career journey and what it is you do now?
Sure, thanks, Charlie. Good morning, everyone. I'm honoured to be here to answer any questions you have, share my journey, sort of talk a little bit about studying and working in economics. So by way of introduction, my name's Rebecca Bell. I'm currently a manager in the economics consulting practice at KPMG, and I specialise in financial economics. Before I talk more about what I do now, like the other panelists, I'll share a bit about my journey and how I got here. So I've taken a little bit of a less direct route, I think, than the other panelists. And it was probably mostly characterized by just not knowing really what I wanted to do. So I'll go back to all the way back to school. In my A levels, I couldn't choose what I wanted to do. I had no idea. I picked A levels and things that I enjoyed. So I did both, like Tuli, I did both mathematical subjects and English literature. I've never really just been able to pick one subject, it seems. I didn't have the option to study economics at school. I didn't really know what economics was at the time. And there was no one that I knew that worked in the field or a sort of a similar field. I ended up falling into studying philosophy, politics, and economics. So like Brodie, I did the joint degree at York. And this came about in a very, it's quite a funny way. My mum always wanted me to be a lawyer. And I was really against the idea for a while until, and then I watched Legally Blonde and thought, actually, yeah, maybe I'll be a lawyer. So I ended up going to some law and politics summer schools when I was at school. Realised didn't really like law, it sounded quite boring. But politics sounded really interesting. So then I was looking into politics, but I still had this idea I wanted something to do a bit mathematical. Spoke to a girl at one of these summer schools who mentioned PPE. And on a complete whim, I looked into it a bit and I was like, oh, that sounds fun. It's a variety of subjects, don't have to pick exactly what I want to do now. Economics is mathematical, politics and philosophy are a bit more, or less mathematical. So I applied, got in and studied, and then started to study. Realized pretty quickly that politics wasn't my thing. Loved philosophy, but wasn't that good at it. And realized that economics I both really enjoyed and was not that bad at. So sort of specialized. I ended up getting the degree across all 3 subjects, but did specialize into mostly economics. So the majority of my degree was in economics. I then did an internship at a bank in between my 2nd and 3rd year of university, which I liked, but wasn't 100% sure about. So then when I was going on to apply for grad roles, again, lots of rejections. It's not all smooth sailing. But I was accepted onto the grad scheme at KPMG in a different team. So I was originally in our forensic accounting practice, which is sort of looking at a lot of anti-money laundering and sanctions. Then whilst doing this, I trained as a chartered accountant. So I got my ACA through KPMG. Then I think it was sort of mid COVID, I quickly realized that the job, sat at home at my parents' house, not really actually enjoying what I was doing, didn't really love that team, and managed to move over to our economics team through being involved in a women's network at KPMG. And one of the female partners in the team was a big supporter of the network. And I didn't realize at the time that we had an economics practice. I thought in my head it was only that economics was very sort of government and policy focused. But actually, this kind of opened my eyes to economics in a very corporate sense, which was really interesting. So I reached out to her, spoke about what she did, ended up doing a bit of work with the team, and then a secondment, and then eventually moved permanently over to the team about 3.5, 4 years ago now. God, it's been a long time. So then, yes, I was in the economics team, realized that most people in the team had their master's degree. So decided to do my master's part-time whilst working. I did this at Birkbeck, which sat very nicely with what I was doing. At this time, I didn't want to go back to university full-time. So they do evening classes and online classes. So I did it through there part-time. So yeah, that's where I am, and I've been in the economics team now for a few years. I'll give you, if I still have a bit of time, Charlie, I'll give a short,
real quick rundown
brief about what we actually do. So there's about 40 economists in the team, and we're split into sub-teams. So we have a macro team that focus on sort of macroeconomic forecasting. We have a policy appraisal team that look at value add of either government policies or of commercial sort of initiatives almost. And then we have a competition team that look at competition economics and doing competition analysis for companies that are potentially being investigated by the CMA or are looking to merge. But where I sit is in our financial economics team, because I've got a background in finance through being an accountant. We look at mostly, it's sort of a lot of corporate finance, some profitability analysis, cost and price modeling, usually in the context of regulatory reviews. So we usually work with regulated companies, but also we do sort of economic analysis for banks and any other corporate company that might be being investigated by the CMA. There's a big profitability analysis sort of sector to competition
all right
reviews. So sorry, Charlie, I'm probably wasting time. But back to you.
Yeah, great. So now we're going to move on to kind of several questions and kind of have a little bit of an open discussion. So it should be good. We'll start with our first question then. Brodie, would you like to start with this one, and then we'll move to each of you if you have things to add. We've had this sent in a couple of times as well. So a lot of people want to know, during your journey through your careers in economics, have you ever encountered any sort of barriers that have stopped or slowed you? And if you did, how did you kind of deal with that situation and move past it?
Yeah, for me, definitely, I can think of a lot of like different stuff that's come up at different points. I think the biggest one that kind of stands out is probably the stereotype of what an economist is and what an economist actually does. And for me, I think the important thing to do with them is actually just to challenge them and stand up to them. So, for example, I remember when I was at school and we were picking our subjects, I was lucky enough that economics was a subject at my school. Obviously, it's not for everyone. And we were picking them, and I was like, yeah, I think we can do economics. It sounds kind of cool and interesting, like the maths side of it, the policy side of it. And a boy in my class went, oh, no, like economics, that's not really like a girly subject. Like it's not quite a subject for someone like you. And I remember just thinking like, oh, is that true? Like really? And I guess that feeds into the whole stereotype of like an economist, probably like an old white guy in a suit, making lots of money with different charts and stuff like that. And in reality, that is so far from the truth. There's so many different sides of economics. Obviously, the finance side is one part of it, but it's just only one part, and there's loads of different things you can do for it. I don't know if maybe that also says a bit more about me, that then this boy made the comment and it did actually annoy me so much, because there's no such thing as a boy subject or a girl subject or anything like that. You need gender representation in all different subjects. I was so stubborn. I then went on and obviously did economics, got the best grades in my school, and went on to be an economist, which probably just says I am really stubborn and I hate stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's really important that we do challenge these stereotypes when they come up, whether that's like us ourselves, or also thinking wider within economics, obviously like women of colour in economics or people who have disabilities, different sexualities. It's important that we all stand up for them, and also the men in economics also stand up for us and sort of challenge these stereotypes when they come up, so we can really change that whole picture so women are more represented at every level in every sector within economics, I think.
Yeah, nice. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to add?
So one thing I wanted to add on to that is, I think like diversity in kind of the subject academically and profession has probably improved over time, but I can definitely see and feel that in certain spaces, and particularly spaces where like the power is concentrated, it is more male, like in senior positions and senior ranks. And I think, you know, when you're sort of in those spaces, you do feel like more of a minority. And so there is this process of learning how to like adapt to and operate within that kind of minority sphere. You know, one hopes that things will change over time, and I think they are, but that is still a reality. And in terms of kind of how you navigate that, like from my personal experience, I think it's really important to like not lose who you are. Just remember to still be yourself and embrace who you are, because ultimately that is, you know, the best version of yourself will always be as yourself, because pretending is so much harder. But there is also this like process of how do you navigate that, and I think it's important there to have allies, and those allies are, it might not just be women, it might be other men as well, and there is like this onus on men to also kind of speak up and be part of that journey towards progression. And I think some of these, it is, again, like Brody was saying, it doesn't just affect women, it affects like multiple different minority groups.
Yeah, definitely. Would anybody like to add anything, or shall I ask our next question? Yeah, okay, great. We'll start with you then, Charlotte, for this next one, if you don't mind. So this question is around sort of strategies or initiatives that you found that are around you to support you during your career in economics, or ways that you've found effective in promoting gender equality and empowerment within that field of economics. So are there any sorts of, I don't know, clubs or anything that you find particularly empowering throughout your career?
Yeah, sure. So two things really spring to mind for this question to me. So at SEPA, we have a diversity and inclusion working group, which I'm a member of. For context, SEPA is quite a small economic consultancy, so we've got around 50 people. So in comparison to a consultancy or a firm like KPMG, which is much bigger, employs thousands of people, probably has an internal, well, actually, I think Rebecca said there's an internal women's network. SEPA is not really big enough for that. So the diversity and inclusion working group is really where we can, you know, have a safe space, a good constructive space to discuss issues like gender diversity. So we're involved in talks with the partners in terms of how to address our recruitment practices and improve our recruitment of women. We often see there aren't as many applicants, particularly for senior or non-entry level positions from women. So we're really looking to address that. And yeah, so I found that to be a really constructive and empowering space to, first of all, have my voice heard, and secondly, to, you know, implement some positive change. The other thing that came to mind with this question is the Royal Economic Society UK Women in Economics Network, which was launched last year. And I think it's, you know, it's still quite new. They're building up programs, initiatives and stuff. But I think it seems to be a really exciting development for the industry and for women in economics in particular. I think it seems to have catalyzed a bit of a movement and a real push to improve diversity. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that progresses and getting involved with that.
All right. Anyone else would you like to add anything?
Just that I think, the Royal Economic Society did an event a few weeks ago. Maybe you were all there, but it was really, really interesting. And I think that's also open to students in economics as well, is my understanding. So it's not just professionals, which is really great. And it's a good way to hear speakers and see women in the industry.
All right, then our next question, and we'll stay with you, Rebecca, since you had a little bit of a short one there, is, in your opinion and your experience, what role does mentorship and networking play in having a career in economics and kind of supporting the growth of women in economics?
Mentorship is a huge role. I think women supporting women is very important, particularly in male-dominated fields. I've been very lucky that there's two very strong female partners in my team, and one of them is the reason I joined the team. And they've been, they're big supporters of diversity and getting women into the field. I think just having women that are in those senior positions and being able to see that is really, really important. And when they're there, giving back to more junior women in the field is, hugely important. And I think for me, it's been really, really valuable.
Anybody like to add anything?
I wanted to add a bit on sort of also the networking aspect. Having obviously more senior people are helpful for the experience and kind of perspective they bring by virtue of that, and it can help you have opportunities. But also having, I think, a network of peers has been quite valuable in my experience. For instance, if you're feeling frustrated about something, chances are you're not the only one. So having a peer group who you trust and you can share these issues with, it makes the problem feel a bit smaller, and B, you can kind of collectively take action to help improve things or kind of overcome the problem in any shape. And because ultimately I think you're often stronger as a collective than you are as an individual. So having that kind of support of your peers and sharing of information and knowledge, I think, can be very powerful.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have lost Charlotte. I think she might have a connection problem, so I will try reach out to her as we answer the next sort of questions. Hopefully get her back on. I'm going to move on from the panel questions and go straight to our submitted questions, because we're having so many that are coming in kind of fast and furious. So the more time we can give to those questions, the better. Hope you guys don't mind. And we'll start with there's so many. We'll start with this one because I've seen quite a few questions around mathematics. So this question is, what is the mathematics like as you move on from A-level to university-based economics? Is there a big jump? Did you find that quite manageable? That's come in anonymously.
I'll start on this one. So I found it quite smooth, to be honest. So it definitely helps doing A-level economics, but doing the degree that I did in PPE, there was a lot of people that didn't have mathematics as a background. They tended to then specialize more into the politics and philosophy. But in first year, we had maths and stats classes that you had to take to be able to get to continue with the degree, and you had to pass those exams, and they also counted towards your overall degree classification. So that was really helpful. It gets everyone sort of on a level playing field, and there is the support there. I think at York they had sort of maths drop-in sessions that you could go to help if you were struggling. So for me, it's quite a smooth increase in difficulty, shall we say?
All right, thank you for answering that one. Anybody else like to add to that? And welcome back, Charlotte. Thank you
sorry,
for...
my laptop decided to crash.
Okay, we thought there might be some sort of internet connection or problem, but thank you. Anybody else like to add to that, or shall I? Again, we've got so many, so yeah. Okay.
One thing just to say, I think like I also found it okay, but I think it can vary based on course and university. So, but like thinking beyond university, in actual day jobs, like you don't necessarily need the full level of mathematical training you get at university. So it's kind of worth just thinking, beyond everything.
It's programs that do it for us now.
Yeah.
All right, our next question then comes in anonymously as well. And this one is the UK gender pay gap is coming down for the younger workers, but is still high in the older groups. Do you expect this to disappear as they retire? Things to think about.
Let's hope so. I think it is is what I'd say.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I think
difficult question.
I think personally, like I did my undergraduate dissertation on the gender pay gap, and I looked a bit at it during COVID and how it changed when the division of labour changed, when we were all stuck at home basically. Men and women were doing more housework, or women were doing more even. When I was looking into the gender pay gap, a lot of it, because it is it's larger as women get older, as we all get older, a lot of that does come from women taking time off when they maybe choose to have a family or have different caring responsibilities and stuff like that. So my kind of hope moving forward is we're changing some of those sort of societal norms around having a family and being a mother, and also being an economist, working wherever it is you work. And we're maybe making some like sort of flexible working arrangements better. Hopefully also other sort of dads or whoever is at home helping out a little bit more as well. And I think that could help bring down the gender pay gap. Some personal experience, like where I work at the Fraser Valander Institute, 2/3 of our senior leadership team are women. And our director is also a really amazing, successful woman. She's got 3 kids. She has childcare responsibilities. In her diary, it says like school pickup, school drop off. No one's ever going to challenge that. We completely understand that. So maybe it's time to talk a bit more about workplace culture and that kind of thing. But I think we're moving in the right direction on that one. So hopefully, yeah.
To add to that, I think, sorry, Charlie, just the COVID and actually the working from home and being able to be more flexible with your working has been really brilliant. Like there's a lot of women in my team that do the same thing. And when it trickles down from the top, so when the most senior women are doing it, it's okay for everyone, isn't it? Or it makes it feel more comfortable for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leading on from that then, we've had a question from Portadown College, and I think this kind of touches on to what we thought at the start about sort of Brodie in school and what that boy said to you in class. This question is there still misogynistic sentiment in the finance part of economics? Do you guys still feel that now as you're working in the industry, or is it more of a perception from outside?
A little. It's definitely getting better, but there's times that I've been the only woman on a call, and sometimes it's the getting your voice heard that sometimes you can be spoken over or things like that. But I do think it's not, my team is still very supportive of it, but sometimes a lot of my clients are sort of big banks and sometimes quite masculine industries, or utilities often led by men, which can be a little daunting to start with. But I think there are definite, being a woman in these environments, there are definite advantages to that. And I think we shouldn't be trying to become more masculine. We should stick with, stay feminine, and I think there are definite advantages to that. But it does, yeah, a little, but it is getting better, would be my conclusion.
Anyone else like to add anything?
I think it really depends on so in the financial sector, which particular area you're working in. So from my experience in investment research, I didn't experience any misogyny, to be honest. I did notice sometimes I was the only woman, and like as an intern, I was very, very much standing out compared to all my colleagues, and that was quite a strange position to be in. I have heard experiences from others who might work in a slightly more aggressive type of environment. So, for example, on a trading floor, I think there are definitely some behaviors that are still perpetuating, which are really can be quite toxic. And yeah, I think in those scenarios, it's a case of having the confidence to challenge that behavior, and also not feeling like you have to conform in any way. As a woman, you don't have to be like an aggressive male trader shouting across the room. Change it from within, definitely.
All right, our next question to you all then is a question that's come in anonymously, and it's, what specific skills and knowledge do you find most valuable in your current roles?
For me, because we do a lot of client work, actually being able to present, talk to people, and explain economics in a way that is easy for people that aren't economists to understand. So it's explaining the really complex ideas in a way that your clients can understand, which is really important because they're not often economists, but they want to be able to understand the economics. That's probably the most important for me.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. I think there's this, it's easy to have a preconception that it's all about like the technical work and the technical quality of the work, but actually we're operating in a very human environment in any workplace. And I think recognizing that, communicating in a way that everyone can understand, and internalizing the way people respond to things, and being a bit practical can pay a lot of dividend.
All right, great. Our next question then. Someone from the Bridge Academy has asked, how difficult is it to get into economics without doing A-level maths? I think, did you all study maths?
Yeah. Personally, for me, it's a little bit different. I went to school in Scotland and I went to university in Scotland. So we do hires instead. And I think that's somewhere between a GCSE and an A-level, but correct me if I'm wrong. For me personally, so we do it at the higher level and then you do it at university. And that definitely really helps you understand the basic concepts. And I think it is a requirement to go into university for that in Scotland, but I can't comment in terms of the A-levels.
I think for some economics courses, you have to have studied maths. But if you do a joint degree, you don't have to you don't always have to. I'd say if you are keen on the subject, check universities and check what their entry requirements are. But it's possible to do it because you can pick up the maths, but it definitely makes it easier if you have that background.
Yeah, I imagine there's still a lot of numbers. Even if you have programs, as you've said, to do a lot of that maths for you now, knowing the basics of how it works is probably pretty key, right? Okay. Our next question then is, how or when did you know what economics was as a subject and that you wanted to pursue it? Obviously, some of you have said you got to study it in school. Others, it's not kind of a thing that's done until you are kind of going to college. So, like, how did you just take a leap? Did you know? Just a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think as I said in my intro, had no idea what economics was. Did it completely on a whim. So the first economics lecture at university was when I realized what it was. Luckily, I enjoyed it, but I know that others had a bit more further background in it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I was really fortunate in that my school ran A-level taster sessions. So in year 11, when you were looking at what subjects to study, there were little sessions where you could go and get a taster, and that was a very brief intro into what the subject might be like. I guess I had a very vague understanding of what economics might be, but yeah, like just from, so for example, geography, you talk about things like economic development, or like the human side of geography, there's quite a lot of overlap. So I had a very vague sense, Another point I'd note is that A-level economics can be quite different to university economics. That was really definitely my experience. The Cambridge course was very technical, very mathematical, lots of algebra flying around, whereas A-level was quite different. And so I think if there's a particular side to economics that you're more interested in, definitely look into what the courses are like at the university. So if you're more interested in the slightly more social, qualitative side of economics, you could try and find a course which matches that better. Whereas if you like something that's really mathsy, there are definitely courses which are much more focused in that direction. So worth bearing in mind.
We did have a big range of modules that we could pick. So you could go down the more maths sort of economics or the sort of social economics, which was really good. Yes. Sorry, just wanted to add that.
It's all right. So leading on from that then, someone from Morpeth has asked, what types of roles are there in this industry? You know, you've talked about quite a few different things that you can do, and you are quite varied along. All of you kind of do slightly different things, you know. So are you restricted to those roles, or is it just you can work anywhere? What is that like? If you wanted to kind of go out and get another job, what would be open to you?
One thing to say on that, so I think with the Bank of England, it's a very large organization. So you get lots of room to actually work across different teams in different areas, and jobs can really vary on, how technical they are and requiring mathematical knowledge, or is it a bit more like working with people? So like for instance, I've for the most part worked on issues related to monetary policy, but there are also people working on issues related to financial stability, people working on like regulating banks. So I think this is like a large organization benefit. I think it's different in like slightly smaller companies, but people spend their whole lives at the Bank of England. That's personally a bit daunting to me, like to spend like 20-25 years in one place. But certainly like that's something like big organizations, a benefit that people can bring you. And of course, like there are like external pathways as well. It's quite common to come across people who work across public sector bodies, like go to the treasury, maybe go abroad to like the IMF. And like I think that's certainly that flexibility and variety is available to you in some organizations.
Yeah, I do find that economics as a base is something that you can do lots of different things with. In general, whether you want to go into finance or you want to do policy, or even if you want to take a completely slightly different career path, economics builds a lot of those like problem solving skills that you can apply to loads of different things.
Okay, great. We have had a question that's come in about the Bank of England to Lisa. I'm going to ask you that there. Hope you guys don't mind. So they've asked quite a few, but I think this one is probably the key one that they want to know, which is specific requirements for a student to potentially get a job or an apprenticeship. Was there anything that you needed to be able to get a role within the Bank of England?
So I think I guess a few things to say. Like there are multiple pathways into the Bank of England, including for school leavers. There is a program that runs, and the bank has a lot of different part-time study options. You can do part-time bachelor's, part-time masters. So it is seeking to like facilitate different ways to enter. For me personally, I came about through the internship track. And then I also did a second internship, which was the postgraduate, like for master's students. I think there is like a preconception, or this has evolved over time, where back in the day, the Bank of England did require a master's for certain roles, particularly related to monetary policy. But over time, and I think like right now, that's not a hard barrier to entry. Definitely other roles in the bank is much more conventional to do without a master's. For certain ones in the past, that's been the case, but that's changing over time. So I'd ultimately say, like, and if you're thinking about doing something like a master's, like it can make a difference in just making yourself stand out, but I don't think it's essential. So think about whether you're actually interested in doing that. Like I know the financial aspect is also important, like they're quite expensive, and I mean the bank facilitates this, and you know I think perhaps other organizations do as well. You can do it part-time, so there are different routes and options. So you know, do a bit of research, and feel comfortable reaching out directly to organizations to like find out more about what they offer. I think in general people are helpful.
All right, great. We're heading towards the end of our time. So before we kind of wrap up and ask one final question, it's a really nice open one that's been submitted by the Sacred Heart Grammar School. And they've asked, how can we encourage more girls to study GCSE or A-level economics and pursue careers in this field? We know when you were kind of younger, what would you have liked that would have helped you and encouraged you to pick those subjects?
I think for me personally, I know it's probably different for a lot of different people, but I was actually also reading some interesting research on this recently, and something they've really found, academics have found that's interesting for getting more women into economics is encouraging young girls to know it's not just a subject about numbers and models and stuff like that. It is ultimately about people. And when you're using these different numbers, models, whatever it is, you're actually looking at outcomes for people. So, for example, you can take like monetary policy, do it at the Bank of England. You're interested in people's living standards and how much money they've got in their pockets at the end of the day. We've all seen recently how important that is with the cost of living crisis. So I think it is really important for women to know, anyone really to know, economics is a subject about people, and you can go into so many different parts of it. Whatever your own passion or interest is, I can probably assure you can do something to do with economics, whether it's maybe like sports. People have done stuff to do with economics in there, like the environment, health inequalities. There is kind of a space for everyone, and ultimately it's about different outcomes for people. So I would definitely keep that in mind.
I love that. Anyone else want to add anything?
I'd just say sort of championing and learning about female economists. You know, I think when you have that representation, that's, you know, you see women doing these sort of things, and you think, oh, I can do that too. That recently, I think a woman won the Nobel Prize in economics, which was amazing. So just making people, women, girls, aware that of these great women and the research that they do would be what I'd suggest.
All right. Well, we have to start saying goodbye. So, Rebecca, would you like to say anything as we say goodbye today?
Just thank you all for joining. I hope we've managed to be inspiring, and good luck with all your future studies and career, and hopefully we'll see you in the future.
Thank you. Charlotte, anything you'd like to say as we say goodbye?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo a few points that we've covered today. Firstly, that remember that economics is it's about more than just money. It's such a wide-ranging subject, covers a huge area. It's really about behavior, decision-making, people, like we've covered today. So don't rule it out as an option. It's really facilitating, opens loads of doors. So yeah, definitely worth considering as a subject to study or for a career. Been really great to talk to you all today, and yeah, all the best.
Thank you for joining us. Teely, anything you'd like to say as we say goodbye?
Thank you all for having me. It's been a really great session. Yeah, good luck to all of the students with their studies and any applications that come afterwards. I'd just say, like, you know, definitely, like as others have said, economics is very broad, so do consider it as a pathway. And whatever you decide, like if you know whatever you want, don't be afraid to chase after it. Don't be put off by kind of any barriers. If you know there's kind of like you might be the only woman. Sometimes you kind of have to be the change you want to see, and always have that optimism that I think things can and will get better.
And last but not least, Brody, anything you'd like to say as we wrap up the session today?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it today. And yeah, big thanks to everyone at Speakers for Skills and Discover Econ as well for all the great work you do. I guess one final piece of advice, just echoing all of that, like trust your gut going forward, deciding what you're going to do next. Loads of different people have opinions, like teachers, peers, parents. But ultimately, I think you know what's best for you and what's going to get you up out of bed in the morning to go to work and go to uni for the rest of your life. So yeah, best of luck and thank you again.
Thank you.